Companies are found to have been involved in a VAT fraud scheme that has caused the state more than €4 million in damages, with the prosecution saying that despite 35 arrest warrants being issued, so far only 15 arrests have been made. Another 2 decrees for the return of laws have been overturned by the Law Commission before debate sparked amongst the committee over luxurious spending by Justice Minister Atilda Jornai. The ODIHR report on the elections brought reactions from Albanian politics. Acting Minister for Europe and Foreign Affairs Gen Sarkaj labelled the opposition as guilty of all the problems identified in the report, whilst demanding political dialogue. It's 6 o'clock on Friday, the 6th of September 2019. Good evening and thank you for tuning in to RTV Ora's English edition. My name is Alexandra, bringing you the only daily update of the local Albanian news translated into English. On to the top story tonight, and Tirana's prosecution office has released details of a VAT fraud scheme for which 15 businessmen have so far been arrested. According to investigators, 50 different companies were involved in the scheme, while out of 35 arrest warrants issued by the prosecution, only 15 were executed by the police. It has been learned that investigations are still ongoing and arrest warrants are being sought out against another 35 individuals. The scam involved using fictitious contracts with companies which, after a certain period, became passive or are declared to have had a zero annual turnover in order to receive VAT refunds. In the last 2 years, at least 50 companies have declared that they have had no activity. This avoids tax controls for cases where reviewing of closure of activity is required. It is even reported that individuals who have no income or reside in remote areas are used to create phantom companies. Once identified, the scheme's organisers took ID cards and created companies that were then used to take advantage of the value of VAT. Among the 15 businessmen arrested as part of the alleged VAT fraud scheme is the administrator Pachsor Buzi of the GPG company, the biggest winner of the government's urban renaissance projects valued at over €28 million. According to Tirana Police, the value of fictitious invoices is 182.6 million lek, with a loss of 25.7 million lek to the state budget. Lowering the threshold of businesses included in the VAT scheme from 5 million to 2 million has made tax administration difficult and has led to an increase in fraudulent schemes. Economy expert Arben Malai points out that the rise of abusive schemes is also linked to the level of corruption in the country, while suggesting that all companies caught in violation should be excluded from public tenders for up to 5 years. For the expert Salami Jepa, it is important to review the VAT threshold for businesses, a recommendation also made by the International Monetary Fund. Arben Malai points out that Albania needs deep fiscal policies as the actions taken have failed. Meanwhile, Jepa suggests improving technology as well as tax administration training. Experts say VAT fraud schemes directly impact the budget and severely harm the competition. President Ilir Meta's 7 returned laws have all been overturned within a week by the parliamentary committees. In the Law Commission, members rejected the return for consideration of the law on local self-governance and amendments to the law on the Penal Code. The overthrow of the decrees sparked debate between the majority and the President's representatives. The Socialist Party MP, Spartak Braho, said that with the return of these laws, the level of the presidency has decreased. It is not dignified that the President's decrees require that the legislative technique be regulated, said Spartak Braho. The President is part of the parliamentary process and positive recommendations for improving the rate should be accepted by the Assembly, said the councillor to the President, Bledar Dervishaj. Opposition members also debated raising the issue of luxurious spending by the Justice Minister. Minister Jornai demanded that distortion of the truth be avoided. Despite overthrowing the decrees, President Meta will go to Parliament on Monday. Meta announced that he will be present at 10 o'clock to testify to the Investigative Commission. Acting Minister for Europe and Foreign Affairs Gen Sarkaj told a long press conference that the OSCE ODIHR report on the June 30th elections harshly criticised the opposition. According to him, although the elections were not of the highest level, the international mission has certified them as democratic. It should be noted to be accountable regarding the findings of the ODIHR observation mission that there were problems in the electoral process in Albania. This report is more critical for the opposition than the degeneration of the government's approach in general or the electoral process, said Minister Gen Sarkaj. While speaking on the agenda of the non-parliamentary opposition against the country's integration into the European Union, Acting Minister Sakai said that the launch of a political dialogue is more important than trade with fake news. It is important to start a political dialogue to address all the concerns that are reflected in the report by the OSCE ODIHR than trading with fake news and the active misinformation of the public opinion, and the futile attempt to use an international report to degenerate a fair election process, said Sakai. The opposition's response was not delayed, with the Democratic Party General Secretary Guzman Bardi retorting that for the first time in history of electoral observation, the final report specified that the elections were not democratic. The Socialist Movement for Integration also responded to the same issue. The OSCE ODIHR, despite many criticisms and recommendations, noted that in the report on June 30, citizen interest was not taken into account and that in 50% of municipalities, citizens had no alternative to choose. The Constitutional Court will be operational soon, as there are already 6 candidates for the 5 open vacancies following the inclusion of Jacqueline Peto. In fact, it seems that in the case of the Faculty of Law professor, the evaluation process showed that practice differs from theory. In the theory of the candidate evaluation, the Justice Appointment Council conducts its own investigation and, along with the High Inspectorate of Declaration and Audit of Assets and Conflict of Interests advisory report, comes to a decision. In the case of the report on Peto's wealth, 2 arguments were put forward that seemingly contradicted each other. Point 5 of the report, published by the HIDAAI, is seemingly contradictory, as it states there are no declarations of assets and their values, but then it adds no false declaration was made. Faced with this situation, the Justice Appointments Council has decided to call a professional expert to decide whether problems persist. After reviewing the material, the specialist has declared that the assets created since 1996 are completely justified and with legal income. It is even learned that the expert has considered the HIDAACI investigation as incomplete, and as such, given the circumstances, the name of the law professor has already been added to the list of applicants for the Constitutional Court, thus enabling the unlocking of the situation in the highest judicial institution. The Justice Appointment Council will now continue to list the names that will be then passed on to receive the parliamentary vote. The Constitutional Court is made up of 9 members, but currently only Vitória Tuxa is left in duty after other members' mandates have expired or they have been removed as a result of vetting. Provided all the names the Justice Appointment Council pass on are approved, then the deadlock on the Constitutional Court will be resolved, as the decision-making body must have at least 6 members to function. Approximately 50 new cases of lung cancer are diagnosed each year. The causing factors are varied, but smoking is definitely one of them. Pneumologist Silvana Bala explains the negative consequences that tobacco consumption has on an organism. According to a report by Our World in Data, 1 in 3 Albanians smoke cigarettes. The phenomenon is particularly widespread amongst the male population. Though well aware of the consequences, many smokers say that they find it extremely difficult to give up. Worldwide, tobacco use kills more than 7 million people each year, of which about 900,000 are non-smokers who die from passive inhalation of tobacco smoke. While demolishing the illegal compound of Milhal Koldima, a businessman who attacked Spanish tourists, IKMT announced a new national action against illegal constructions. Now that the tourist season has officially closed, the National Defence Inspectorate of Territory machines have landed on the coast. The operation started from Vlora, where to open the extension of the Lungomara Promenade as planned, over 60 objects are to be demolished. The intervention started from the Uiftot area and is expected to continue throughout September. The first objects were demolished without objection by the owners, who had been notified prior as the action was being taken. The National Defence and Territory Inspectorate urges all citizens to cooperate, while warning that the law and the right of the majority of citizens to public spaces will be implemented. And that's the news across the country today. Thank you for watching our English edition this evening, and be sure to join us again every Monday to Saturday at 6 p.m. for the latest news from Albania. Once again, on behalf of RTV Ora, thank you and good night.